Not many times in Michigan do you get to go out in February at all. As a matter of fact, in my lifetime, this is the first time I've been able to fish on soft water in a boat. You know, my first trip was February 5th. Now we're here at the end of February. We got a big warm front and I had to get out in the water. There's one. I think that one's a bass. We have us a smallmouth. Oh, he is cold, man. That water's 43 degrees, but we got a warming trend right now and we got the wind blowing, and that's one of the biggest things is, he's not a big guy or anything, but when you got a window like this, I mean, it is, you know, end of February here in Michigan. I've never even been able to be out in a boat this time of the year. Got out here today, really excited. The air temperature is supposed to get almost to 70 degrees. That just doesn't happen in February. And I'm thinking power fishing, you know, red eye shad, jerk bait. But as soon as I saw that water temperature, I'm like, ugh, it's still really cold. You know, I started, you know, fishing the typical spring pattern. You know, you want to be on the northerly banks. The wind was blowing out of the south. It's pushing that warm water in. Those fish should be pulling up on those edges. And, you know, I caught a couple of pike and caught a smallmouth bass on a jerkbait, but I could just tell it was just not there. The water was still 41 degrees, even with the wind blowing and the warming temperatures. The lake was cold. These fish are still locked into their winter pattern. As bad as I want them to be up there shallow and be up on those flats and start chasing, that water is still cold and they're still where they wintered at. They're gonna be where the food is at. When I caught the first one on a jerkbait, I'm like, yep, I know they're not gonna be alone. There's gonna be more than one. You know, I was getting a bite almost every cast there, and I'm seeing them on my Mega Live. I'm seeing all the bluegill, and I knew that I'd found them. After catching a half a dozen on a jerkbait, I know that I gotta, you know, try some other things. I threw the Ned rig out there and immediately caught one on that, but I love a rage swimmer. You know, a rage swimmer is one of those baits that's super finessey. You can trigger bass that are really inactive with it, but you can still kind of cover water. You know, I'm fishing it down on the bottom, scooting it along. It looks like a perch, looks like a bluegill, looks like a crawfish. It looks like something good to eat. Got him. Gosh. Still a lot of fun, man. Not a big one, but got back from Texas last week and, you know, got to see some great pre-spawn action down there, but up here in Michigan, it's still, I mean, in my lifetime, I've never been out in a boat this time of year in February. It just doesn't happen. Come back. You know, they're going to be grouped up this time of year. These northern lakes have big populations. I think that's a good one. Look at that head shake. God, he felt bigger than that. Just can't even hardly jump, but sure are pretty. The thing I love to do, you know, early season like this is definitely fish this time of the day. You know, I mean, you don't have to worry about getting out early. I like the early bite, no doubt. I mean, right at sunrise, there's always a good window where they're biting. And then after that, it seems like, you know, the afternoon, late in the day. So, you know, just get out there, let that sun do its thing. Even though, I mean, the water's 43 degrees right now, but that sun is radiating anything dark on the bottom. And that's what I look for is, you know, areas that got dead vegetation, pad stems, dark bottom even, just rocks, anything like that that will get that radiant heat to it. Depth changes, depressions, little ditches, things like that. Even in these northern natural lakes, you know, it's what you look for. In Texas, it was all about following these little drains and ditches into these spawning flats. It's the same thing here in Michigan. You know, you find something where it's a little bit deeper with the warmer water all the way around it, and they're gonna be in there. They're right in the center of this little ditch right here. Great time of the year right now to get out and get a lot of bites. Look at that, they've been biting weird like that. I caught that one right in the bottom of the bottom jaw right there. Little 325 Rage Swimmer, KVD Magic, something natural colored. that's what they're feeding on. I mean, when I graphed into this little depression right here, it was just, I mean, you could just see the bluegill on the mega side imaging, and then as soon as I dropped the trolling motor on the 360 and on my Mega Live, it's just wall-to-wall bluegill, and that's where they're going to be at. That's what they're eating. And that rage swimmer, there's something about that slow wag of that tail that is so good. I mean, just good, solid ones. Black spots on the tail, healthy. Once I started, casting around with that rage swimmer, I really dialed it in. There's a pretty big hole that these bluegill were in, but the bass were really locked into just one corner, and it was right kind of where the wind was pushing into it, which would make sense. I mean, anything where it's going to create some current, a little bit of a funnel, little bit of a, an edge leading up onto this flat, that's where those fish are going to be stacked. So many people, nice one, love swim baits, and so do I. I mean, this rage swimmer is a great bait, but they don't fish them, down on the bottom like we do up in the north. I mean, it's so night and day difference, the number of bites you get. Look at how he ate that thing. I mean, all the way down. All I'm doing is just scooting that along the bottom, just kind of slow hopping it, because pretty much everything up here lives like that. I mean, it's just a good solid keeper, but the way this thing works, with that jig head, it's just kicking up mud and sand, and I mean, they're really acclimated down there anyways right now to the bottom, and it looks like a perch or a crawfish or anything. That's where most of their forage is at. I mean, there's times when the bluegills are suspended, and yeah, then you can take that rage swimmer and throw it through the water column, but early in the spring like this, and really most of the year, this is how I like to fish them up here. In these clear water, places like that, they're not relating to shad, and all the forage that they eat is down there, so scooting that thing or just scruffing it along the bottom is really key. So I always like testing out new baits and new products and things like that, and I got one of these new custom Lite 200 series shallow spool reels from Lew's, and the idea behind having a shallow spool is that you don't need to put near as much line on it to keep it completely full for the best castability. But the other thing that I learned is it really manages the line super well. So, I've got it spooled up with 8-pound braid and then just a fluorocarbon leader. And the way that line lays on there with that shallower spool, it just comes off and goes on perfect every time. I don't get any wind knots, don't really have any problems. So, for bass fishing, I'm not gonna have a bass ever strip 100 yards of line off. So it saves you, line, and again, just being able to manage it so much better. It really handles the line well. I was super impressed. For only fishing a couple hours, having a good day, I caught a whole bunch of fish. Most of them were just good solid keepers, but caught a few up to 3 pounds and so, and it just felt really good to be able to get out early season like this. I mean, the best times are actually coming. I mean, I love it when that water temperature starts getting into the mid to upper 40s. You get into March up here, late March, you're gonna start catching them with a thunder cricket, red-eye shad is just dynamite. That's when a lot of these fish are gonna move out of the basin, move out of these wintering areas and start patrolling these flats. And that's when spring fishing gets really good up here in the north.